All right, folks. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, everyone from wherever you're joining in. My name is Prithviraj, and I welcome you all to the Litmus Chaos-Community Sync-up call. And it's been an amazing month once again for the Litmus Chaos community. Lots of adopters, lots of stories, and lots of things that have happened the last 1 month. We are also having KubeCon coming up and next month, and I hope whoever is joining us for KubeCon will meet us at our KubeCon booth. So before I get started, I'll just talk about the agenda, and then obviously we'll move on to what we have in store for you all. So let me share my screen with the agenda for today. Just a second. Can you see my screen? I hope everyone is able to see my screen. It's the 39th Community Sync-up. I think we've lost count.
I can see it.
And once again, firstly, we'll obviously introduce new members on call. I see a few new folks joining in, but perhaps I'll allow them to introduce themselves. Then we'll talk about the community updates. We have a packed agenda today. We'll be talking about the 2.13 release, which released last week, and that will be shared by Vedant. And then following that, Sarthak will cover the API refactor and LitmusCTL updates, which will be part of the release notes walkthrough itself. Then we'll talk about the Cmd Probe enhancements, which will be covered by Shubham. And lastly, Udit will be covering the SSC and help report updates as well. And we'll be opening the floor for question and answers in between, of course. Obviously, if you have any questions, feel free to ask them on chat. We'll try to answer them, or else we'll open the floor for questions in the end. So before any further ado, I would love to ask everyone who's joining in new to introduce themselves. I see Anusha, I see Caleb, I see Maharaja, Santosh, I see Erdele, Yash. Perhaps you can just unmute one by one and introduce yourselves.
Hey Prithvi, Yash here. So I recently joined Dream11 and we are exploring chaos engineering, and yeah, that's why I've joined the call to know more about it and how to go ahead with it. So I work as SD there. Yeah.
All right, Yash, thanks a lot. Who's next?
I can introduce myself. This is Sabor Chardey. I'm from FIS MVP group. I'm basically just supporting the QA person, Anusha, who's doing the chaos testing for our reference application. And yeah, I assume that's why I was invited to this meeting.
Thanks a lot, Shabol, for joining in. It's a pleasure having you.
Thank you.
Who's next?
I can go ahead and go. Hi, everyone. I'm Caleb. It's nice to meet you all. I am a software engineer at HCL Software here in the United States. So I'm mostly working with the platforms team at HCL Software with driving cloud native maturity through chaos engineering across our platform portfolio. So we have been using Litmus, mostly prototyping with it, and now starting to introduce it to the rest of our company. So just excited to see what everyone is working on and be a part of the community. Thanks.
Glad to have you here, Caleb. Just a shout out to Caleb. He'll be sharing a little insight into their journey at HCL with Litmus Chaos in the upcoming Chaos Engineering Meetup. I'll share the link to the Chaos Engineering Meetup on chat as well. We are having a Chaos Engineering Meetup next Thursday, 29th, sharp at 6:30 p.m. IST, 3 p.m. CEST. So folks, whoever is available, feel free to join in, and we'll have Caleb sharing more on their chaos engineering journey. Anyone else who would like to introduce themselves? Maharaja, Santosh, Anusha. All right, folks, I think we can go ahead. I see a couple of folks from our Harness community as well joining in, Andrew and Akmal. Anyone would like to introduce yourselves?
Hey, my name's Andrew. I'm from the Harness team, and I'm just on here to listen and learn about all the great work that everyone's doing.
Yeah, same here. I'm Akmal, and it's cool to see new things. Really cool, guys.
Awesome, Akmal, Andrew. We are glad to have you here, and I hope you guys have a good time part of the Litmus community meetup. So before any further ado, I would get started with the agenda we have in hand. So first things first, we'll obviously talk about community updates. So in the last 1 month, we had a lot of updates, and yesterday we also had a blog come out on the same. That's the Litmus Chaos August 2022 update, which covers everything that happened in August as well as things that have happened around September. I'll be sharing the link to the blog here. So a few things. Obviously, we had the 2.12 release followed by the 2.13 release, which Vedant will be covering. And we had some great updates. I mean, there was some update to the HTTP chaos, which Akash has been covering here and there, which was spoken in the Chaos Engineering Meetup as well. There were some good bug fixes and updates to the Chaos Center. And I think there are more which will be covered by Sarthak and Vedant. There are some shout outs as of course, we have shout outs. We are giving shout outs to the contributors, Dave, David, Amit, Saranya, Sarthak, Adarsh. And then further, we had some adopters. The adopters are listed on the Litmus Chaos website as well. We have Jonathan, who's been a great community member. He's been using Litmus for some time now. Hopefully, we'll hear from him by the end of this call. Who's working for CI&T, and he's been using Litmus for some time now. He has shared his journey on the user stories side. And then obviously we had the Chaos Engineering Meetup, which was joined by Shubham and Akash, who spoke about the updates to the Litmus SDK and also demoed the HTTP Chaos experiments. So all this is listed in the blog, and then obviously you can see the latest adopters that have joined in. It's HCL Cloud Native Labs. They have been using Litmus for some time now, and they are using Litmus to adopt a cloud native approach towards their I mean the other tools that they have been using. And it's also InfraCloud that's been using Litmus. And if you want to add your organization, obviously you can go ahead and add your organization here in this issue, and you can see here are some latest comments from our latest adopters. So if you see, there's some good comments from Ruturaj. Shout out to Ruturaj, who's been a community member from InfraCloud, and he suggests why he has been using Litmus and for who they've been using Litmus. You'll hear from him maybe in the next upcoming community calls. And lastly, a KubeCon update for you all. We are participating at KubeCon from the 24th to the 28th of October next month. We are having a project office hours on the 24th. So whoever is joining us at KubeCon, feel free to join us for the project office hours. We are also celebrating a chaos day. Hopefully the videos will come out once that's over. There's a packed agenda featuring a lot of talks based on Litmus as well. And following that, we have a couple of talks featuring Nilanjan as well as Shubham, who'll be sharing their journeys. One is obviously chaos engineering on the fintech side with Nilanjan and Raj. Shout out to Raj Badheraju, who's again part of the FIS team and a core community member with Litmus. And then Shubham alongside Srinivas from IBM will talk about SLOs and Litmus Chaos and more with Iterate as well, which is again being great community members with Litmus. Lastly, we'll also have a project meeting on the last date, and if you are there at KubeCon, feel free to drop by the Litmus Chaos booth, and we'll be glad to see you and talk more about your chaos engineering journey. So without any further ado, I'll allow Vedant to take over now. This was the quick community update for everyone. And Vedant, you can go ahead and move forward with the 2.13 release updates. Thanks, everyone.
Hi, everyone. Hey, thanks, Prithvi. This was good updates on the community side. So yeah, hi, everyone. This is Vedant. I'm also a senior software engineer at Harness. I will be giving a brief walkthrough of the release notes of the release we just had, 2.13.0. So I'm just sharing my screen. Yeah. Yep. I hope my screen is visible. So yeah, let's start with core components updates. So one of the main enhancements that we have done this time is with respect to the network chaos experiments. So if you have been using, network chaos experiments before, like in Istio-based experiments, you might have, faced the situation. So generally in normal clusters, when you're not using, a particular service mesh, the network chaos experiment would have worked fine. But when you go into this, service mesh chaos based service mesh based, clusters, in that case, the situation changes, right? So there, if you see internally, what we do is when we are running, network chaos experiments, generally you are providing a particular destination IP or destination host to, target particular request, right? Now, in that case, we generally use TC rules. We set up TC rules with respect to those hosts and IPs, and that's how we target those requests. But in case of service mesh, the situation changes because we can't directly use the service IPs of the services if you are using Kubernetes services, because in service mesh case it's not whenever the packet is leaving the container, it's not having the service IP. So even if we set the rule set to that particular service IP of the particular service, it might not work in that case. So as an enhancements, now what we have done, like now network chaos have become a more bit intelligent. So in case you are running your network chaos experiment in a cluster which is service mesh enabled, it will directly try to detect which service mesh you are using. So in case you are using a service mesh in which changes the destination IP of the packet when it is going out of that particular container, in that case, if you're providing destination IP, our network chaos experiment will also change its working, and it will work according to the IPs of the target pods, not based on a target service IP. And that's how it is going to target your particular service in case you're using destination host as Kubernetes service. So if you want to know more about how we are making those changes, you can surely go ahead and look into this PR, and you can also ask us questions about it, how we are doing it. We will be happy to tell you about it. So yeah, this was one of the great enhancements that we did. Now next is with respect to the Chaos SDK template. So this was also a query from many of the community members. We had our Chaos SDK templates with respect to generic experiments, or in case you are using an experiment which is based on exec based chaos lib or helper based chaos lib. We had these things, but with respect, when you are going for creating an experiment which is based on infra, maybe AWS, VMware, Azure, or GCP, in that case, like previously we didn't have the templates, but now you have. So if you want to see if you are going to generate your own experiments or charts, you can surely use the Litmus SDK template for generating your own experiments. So I will let Udit Gaurav to give more brief description about it, but yeah, let's move forward with it. Yeah. So you can surely look into the PR, what are the different templates that are getting added there. So next is with respect to the stress chaos experiments. So this was also a query from one of the community members. So we have our SEC docs, but we had our permissions. We wanted to minimize the permissions that are required for running the stress-based experiments. Generally in OpenShift cluster you might be using SCC. So for that we have updated our SCCs with the new capabilities and also reduced many of the capabilities which are not required now, and with all the comments accordingly. So that is also Udit will be giving you more brief discussion about it. So yeah. Next is HTTP status code experiment. So in this case, we, if you're providing an status code, so generally if you have been using, you might be using it, providing in status code 400 or 500. So generally it was like, let me also, go to this one, documentation, right? So yeah. So previously we had our one tunable that was status code. So we were generally providing which stress code we want to have as a response, right? But and then accordingly, the body was also getting changed if you are providing the modified response body as true. Otherwise, you would have received the same body as you were getting normally, but stress code would have been updated according to the stress code you're providing here. But like as an enhancements, what we have done is now you can also give more tunables, so like content encoding or content type. And why we have added this, because if you see right now, as you have the option for giving the like response body, since you have the option for providing the response body that you want to have it returned. So now you have the option for changing status code as well as changing the response body along with it. And now as you are getting the option for changing response body, you are also getting an option for adding which content encoding you want to have. So it can be gzip or deflate or any one you want to use. And similarly content type also. So for example, in our case, we are providing we are not providing any body here, but as you see, like you might be providing an HTML snippet here, so you can have the content type as HTML. And if you're providing general text, you can have the text plain, and similarly JSON, something like that, right? So now you can modify those things here as well. And similarly same things goes for modify body also. Same options you will get from there, because you can update the body there, so you can also update content encoding and content type there. So that was the update on the HTTP chaos experiment. Next is now we have the ability to add custom service account for helper pod also. So before, like the helper pod used to use the same service account as experiment pod, but now you can also set a different, if you want to use a different service account for helper pod. It was also, I think we had a query from different community members in OpenShift cluster. We wanted to use a different service account for the helper pod. So similarly, now you can use this env and you can provide a different service account for the helper pod also. If you're not providing, then it will use the default one, the same as the experiment pod. Okay. Next is this one, Kiosk Operator. So on Kiosk Operator, as you already know, in the last list we had upgraded the operator SDK versions, and now as our Kiosk Operator also supports multiple replicas, so now there comes a feature where you have to select a leader. So in that case, now the Kiosk Operator also allows to have leader selection by enabled when you are having a multiple replicas, and that particular leader will only reconcile on your different CRDs that we have, chaos engine, chaos experiments and all, right? Similarly, this was one enhancements on the code base side. And the history field we have changed to go pointer in chaos result display, or little bit of enhancements. And then one more thing, so like this was an edge case that has been handled now as an enhancement, like helper pod status check. So whenever you are running an experiment which result in creation of helper pods, right? So in that case, experiments helper pod status check logic has been enhanced to have a better look. So now previously we are looking at pod, now it is looking at the pod as well as container status. And next is we have added documentation for new HTTP chaos experiment. So as I just have shown you, like for the status code, we have added this documentation. Similarly, in modify body, if we go, we get the same response body. Either way, we had this option to change it, and but also have the option for adding the content type and content encoding here also, right? So yeah, these were the core component updates. But yeah, as a we can have a notice like this. These are the like changes which are in core component side. So if you look at the chaos center side, this will be coming in the next list, but you can surely test them out by changing the images in your deployment. So that is something that if you want to test these things, you can surely go ahead and update the images and test them. And now coming to the chaos center side. So this time we have one change that we have done is with respect to the chaos scenario construction. So previously in our chaos engines, because like if you are enabling revert chaos, in that case we had a label instance ID for deleting all the chaos engines, right? If you have the revert chaos enabled, but this was causing a bit of issues when you try to rerun your experiments, right? Because if you are running a same or same experiment, then the instance ID will be same in that case. So revert chaos, revert chaos step might, not behave as it is, or it might delete the chaos engines of other workflows. So as an enhancement now, let me just give you a demo. So if you now go, so I have deployed the 2.13.0. So if you now go in, chaos engine, you will see that the label now we have is workflow run ID. So why we have made it as workflow run ID is because like even if you're running a workflow, starting or scheduling a workflow, the workflow run ID is something, which will be generated in backend. So it will always be runtime generated and it will always be unique. So even if you're scheduling a single workflow, just as an start, you will get a new workflow run ID. And if you try to rerun the same workflow, in that case also you will get a new workflow run ID. And if you try to edit this workflow or edit this workflow, in that case also you will get the new workflow run ID. So in all the cases, your workflows will be unique from each other, and so that they won't they will be isolated from each other even in the revert chaos step, right? So this was one of the things, one of the enhancements that we have done. And similarly, as I said, like we generally use the one last release version of core components. So if you see in this release also, we have upgraded the Kiosk Operator. So these are part of core components only: Kiosk Inner, Kiosk Exporter, and Operator, and Experiments, Litmus Go. So we use the one last release version. So since this is a 2.13, so we are using 2.12. So as an highlight, as in 2.12.0, if you remember, we had a support for image pool secret source in the chaos engine. So this comes as a part of this upgrade, but surely like from UI currently it's not there, but from backend, if you want, you can surely provide the same from the manifest and it will work. And since we are upgrading to 2.12, any other enhancement that you wanted to test with 2.1.2, this will come as a part of this release in Chaos Center. Next is in last release, since this we had some source attributes changes in the CRDs. So those changes were not added in the CRDs of 2.12.0's Chaos Center. So those changes are also added there. So yeah. And next is this. This was one of the requirement from one of the community members. So in Helm, previously we didn't have a way to give service type for all the components differently. So previously it was like we were using by default some service, like for front end we were using node port, and for other services we were using cluster IP, but users didn't have the choice to update the service and ports and all. So now through values.yaml, if you go, you will have the option to update the service type as well as ports. So that is something that you can now do from your values.yaml directly. So if you see in front end only, this is here. So you can also add annotations and other things. And similarly for other components also, if you see this is GraphQL server, you get the service configuration here. And similarly for auth server also, you get the service configuration here. So now you can also change the type and port and everything from here only. So this was one of the requirements, and this was a good feature that we added. Yeah, so these were all the updates on the Chaos Center side. I will let Sarthak talk more about the Litmus ETL updates. Coming to shout outs, so shout out to Chandra and Caleb. We had external contribution this time from them. Or like if you see in Litmus ETL also, we had an external contribution for changing the binary extension to .exe. That was also there. And yeah, generally we have our internal contributors as well, and installation instructions are already updated here. And yeah, that's all on this side. I will let Sarthak talk about more on the Litmus ETL updates. So like if we have any questions till now on the updates, I can take them.
Sure, Vedant. Thanks for the updates. Hey everyone, I am Sarthak and I am a senior software developer at Harness. And I'll be walking you through the Litmus ETL changes that we have made in this release. Let me just share my screen. Right, I assume my screen is visible. So Litmus ETL 0.13.0 has been released this time, and here are a few updates that have been made. So firstly, Litmus ETL adds changes for error handling in Litmus ETL apply manifest logic for better debugging and usability. So there can be multiple instances where the apply manifest logic can throw an error. For example, while scheduling a scenario or while trying to connect a chaos delegate, and for example, a user may not have sufficient permissions to perform the operation, but still, if user tries to perform that operation, the user may encounter a permission denied error, or maybe some errors related to RBAC. So the errors that Litmus CTL will log will be self-explanatory and will be easier for users to debug it. Another thing that Litmus CTL adds is the .exe extension to bindings on Windows. So earlier we had this as an issue. So if a user wants to install Litmus CTL on Windows, they would have to manually add this .exe extension to install it. But after this release, like .exe extension will be by default added. And for this contribution, a big shout out to Caleb. I guess he's present in this meeting as well. Thanks for your contribution, Caleb, and thanks for identifying this issue and fixing this one. So the more description can be found on this link about the PR. And another thing that we have added is like we have upgraded the Argo workflow version to 3.3.1 and Kiosk Operator to 2.12.0 to reduce the vulnerabilities. So if you are using Litmus CTL, or if you like attended previous sessions, you might be aware that it is now possible to schedule scenarios through Litmus CTL as well. So we have this feature added in Litmus CTL, and that's why there has been a dependency to Argo workflows and Kiosk Operator. And for that reason, this change has been added. So these were the major changes that have been done in Litmus CTL for this release. Apart from this, like there was also a major change that was made in the last release. So like just in case if I have missed it, so like major changes in the terminology part were made in Litmus CTL 0.12.0 release. So some of the changes, like the commands have been listed here. The same commands are available in the Litmus docs as well. And a good thing about this is that even though the commands are updated, the Litmus, even if you are using an older version of Kiosk Center, the latest version of Litmus CTL will be compatible with the version of Kiosk Center that you are using. So there was few instances where users were facing issue with Litmus CTL and Kiosk Center, and we found that it was because the Litmus CTL was not compatible with the Kiosk Center. So for that, we have added another command in Litmus CTL. So user can just type Litmus CTL version here, and Litmus CTL will return the installed version and all the compatible Kiosk Center versions that are available. Another thing is that while trying to authenticate inside or trying to authorize in Litmus CTL, so Litmus CTL will automatically prompt you if your Kiosk Center and Litmus CTL versions are compatible. If not, it will ask you to update the Litmus CTL or change the Kiosk Center or Litmus CTL version accordingly. So this compatibility matrix can be found on Litmus CTL README as well, and in the Litmus docs as well, so that you can choose which Kiosk Center or which Litmus CTL to install with your install version of Kiosk Center. Also, since there were some changes in the commands, so user can just use the Litmus CTL help command, which will list all the available commands in Litmus CTL. And like for the ease of usage, we have these commands added in Litmus CTL itself. So yeah, so these were the major changes that were added in Litmus CTL for this release and the release that was done before this one. If you have any questions, you can maybe ask or post it in the chat. We'll try to answer it.
Yeah, I think we can pause for a minute and just see if there are any questions on the items added in this release.
So I guess like if you have question, you can maybe post it in the chat. And for now, I would invite Amit to share some changes that were done on the API part.
Thanks, Sadat. So hi everyone, I'm Amit Kumar Das. I'm also a senior software engineer at Harness, and I'm also a core contributor to Litmus Kiosk, and I basically work on the Kiosk Center side. So as shown by Sarthak, that we had some good amount of changes in the Litmus ETL along with terminologies. So similarly, few weeks back, we updated our APIs and all the parameters from the Kiosk Center side. So I'll be going through all a few of the APIs and how we have updated a few of them. So yeah, let's get started. I'll share my screen. Yeah. I hope my screen is visible.
Yes, Amit.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, so few weeks back, we worked on a major refactor to change the APIs with some standardizations, and we got a few feedbacks from the Litmus community that the APIs were a bit hard to understand. We don't have proper documentation for the same. So we took upon this step, and a huge shout out to the Kiosk Center team to work on this. So with the this is the proper PR where we have added all the changes, and few changes for we have updated the parameters which are following snake cases into camel case, and also we have updated the API names with proper standards so that it will be easier for the contributors to contribute, and also to use APIs from the backend itself, from the GraphQL server itself. So if I go to my GraphQL playground, I can actually see all the APIs listed here. And now they follow a similar structure. So if I take a query, I can see that we have given the names as request and response. And this will be visible in all the APIs, request and response. So earlier, we were providing some random names, in case of request, we were just providing workflow IDs, some sorts, some filters, but now we have clubbed it together in a request parameter, which consists all these input details. So these can be visible in all the other APIs. We have the request, we have the response. Similarly, in a few of them where we have less amount of input parameters, we have kept it open. And for other than that, we are following the same structure in other APIs. And one more thing the team did was add documentation on these APIs. So in this GraphQL playground, we can see that for all the APIs and for individual schemas, we have proper documentation. So considering this API, the list workflow API, we can see that it returns the list of a workflow in project based on various filters. So yeah, so this was the functionality of this particular API. And if I click on some other input parameters, I can see that we can define the details of the workflow here. So this was one of the functionality that we have added along with updating the APIs, to provide some good docs for the APIs. And these are actually available in our code base as well. So if I show our code base, so from the backend side, we have modularized the code base, the schema code base. So earlier, all our APIs were clubbed into a single file, which was basically a single GraphQL file consisting all our APIs. But now we have splitted all our APIs based on the different features that we have. So we can see we have analytics, a different file for analytics, which consists of all the schemas and all the queries and mutation. We have different subscriptions. Similarly, based on clusters, we have different APIs. And if you consider all of the features for Kiosk Hub, for workflows, we have different directory for all of them. So this will be very helpful to the contributors if they want to add some changes or make some changes in any of the functionality. So if we check the, for example, if we check the workflow API file, we can see that we have the schema over here, and we have added comments on all our schemas. So this particular schema workflows, it defines the detail of the workflow. So what if we want to know inside this particular schema? If we want to know what this suggests weightage, so we have the description as this. It's basically an array which contains the weightage and the name of each Kiosk experiment. So similarly, we have other details on all our schema as well. And if we go a bit down further below, we can see that we have different mutations, different queries, and also we have added the documentation for each of the mutation and queries. So it will be very helpful to the contributors and the users. And from the backend side, we have modularized the code, and we have basically structured our API and schemas. So the similar change was done in the front end side as well. So since we are using all these APIs in our front end, so we have also made some directory structure changes in our GraphQL folder. So this is basically the front end folder of Kiosk Center, and we have split it into mutations and queries. So this is also consisting of the same directory structure based on the different functionality we have. So the mutations, we have mutations for all our features, which are like basically the analytics, the Kiosk Hub, image registry, and workflows. So similarly, as just like mutations, we have the queries in a very well-structured way. So yeah, so this was one of an important change that we have added a few weeks back. And yeah, so like we got some major concerns from our APIs, the community said that they were not able to understand the APIs and all. So we have made these changes. And apart from that, we have a dedicated API docs, and this has been updated with the newer APIs as well. So in our API docs, like we can see that it has been structured in a similar way as we have it, in our directory structures of APIs. So for clusters, we have the list agent APIs. For workflows, we have all our Kiosk workflow APIs. So we can create a Kiosk workflow, we can list a Kiosk workflow, and all other operations that are available in the Kiosk Center. And similarly, we have the Kiosk Sub APIs. We can add, list, sync, delete, and other APIs as well. Similarly, we have the workflow management APIs from where we want to enable GitOps, if you want to provide some custom image registries. Similarly, we have the analytics. We can see all the heat map data and all. And apart from that, we have the authentication API, which actually is REST API. So we have all our authentication APIs here. So yeah, so these were the changes that we have added along with the API refactors. And yeah, that's, I think that was pretty much it from the API side. And I see a question in the chat regarding GraphQL API. So I would like to take it up and show a sample workflow that I can create from the GraphQL API itself. So yeah, I see Santosh with that. Please explain a bit about GraphQL API. So yeah. So hi, Santosh, thanks for the question. And yeah, so let's try to create a Kiosk workflow from API. So we can see that I have the Kiosk Center here, and I have already ran a scenario basically, and it has already executed. But what if I don't want to make it from the Kiosk Center, and I want to make it from the GraphQL playground, or I want to use the GraphQL API? So what I can do is I can like simply use the playground, or basically you can use this this particular mutation, which is also available in the API docs. So in API docs, I can go to the Kiosk workflow, and in Kiosk workflow, I can see that we have a create Kiosk workflow API. So this API is basically used to create the Kiosk workflow. This can be either for one-time run, or it can be a cron schedule. And here we have a few of the fields which are required to use this API. And if you go a bit down, then we can see that we have the mutation here, which takes a certain sort of request, and it will give us a response with these following details: the workflow ID, the workflow name, description, and other details. So yeah, so what I can do is like I can like copy this mutation, and I can paste it in this GraphQL playground. So this is already done, and I have provided some sample details over here. So this particular API takes the workflow manifest. So this is actually a YAML manifest which is converted into JSON form, and it consists of all the Kiosk experiment and Kiosk engine details. And apart from that, we have the cron syntax. So this workflow will be scheduled right now. So I have not provided any cron details here. And we have a field named as workflow name, and a description that I can provide, like provided a test description. And we have a weightage array that I was talking about. Like we can provide the weights which are present in our Kiosk workflow. So these weights are actually the names of the experiment which are present in our Kiosk workflow. And is it a custom workflow? So I can like provide true or false based on if it's a custom workflow or it's coming from Hub. And if I want to execute this create Kiosk workflow in a particular project, so I have to provide the project ID, which can be actually taken from either you can use it from LitmusCTL to fetch the project IDs, or if you're using the Kiosk Center, you can like fetch the project ID from here. Similarly, I want to run this particular experiment in one of the delegates which are present. So currently I only have the self agent. If I have any custom delegates, I can provide the particular ID of that delegate. So I'll just go here and copy the delegate ID. Yeah, so this is done. And I can go back and like I'll provide the cluster ID here. So yeah, so I have provided all the basic details which are required for this particular API. And one thing I wanted to check is I already have a workflow with this particular name, so I wanted to change it. So let me change it to test2, and I have to update in the manifest as well. Yeah, test2, and I'll just hit the run button here. And yeah, we got a response that the workflow name is done this and the workflow description is this. And if I go back to Kiosk Center, I can see that workflow has started, and we have successfully executed this this API, the create kiosk workflow API. And we can see the details over here. So these details can also be fetched with APIs. So we have some dedicated APIs like list workflow runs, which will return all the workflow related details. And we have the list kiosk workflow, which will return all the kiosk workflow details here. So yes, like this was a very short demo on how we can use the APIs to schedule a workflow or like to perform some other operations if you want. So I guess it will help you, Santosh, and other community members.
Yeah, this is very useful.
And we have a few videos on this as well. So I'll probably drop the links for the videos in the chat as well. So you can take a look for that. Yeah.
Sure. Okay. Thank you.
So any other questions? Yeah.
While we are on this, I mean, a lot of folks who want to invoke, do programmatic invocation of chaos can use these. Would you also like to talk about the ongoing efforts with bringing the scenario CRUD to LitmusCTL?
Yes, sure. So recently we got some basic community requests, like user wants to run kiosk workflows from LitmusCTL. So like the current approach that we are following is from a UI, or we can use the APIs. But with LitmusCTLs, we have also provided some inputs, like we can create a kiosk workflow from LitmusCTL. We can list the kiosk workflows from LitmusCTL. So I need to check if I have the LitmusCTL installed. Okay. So we have these functionalities also in the LitmusCTL. So if I can check the PR for the same.
Hey, Amit, can I take this one?
Yeah, sure, Sarthak. If you have the latest one installed, you can. This will help the team. Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Thanks.
If I hope my screen is visible. Yep. So with LitmusCTL 0.10.0, we have added this feature where user can basically perform the CRUD operations on all the workflows or chaos scenarios that we're calling them right now. So these are the commands that were added previously. LitmusCTL get workflows to list the workflows that are present on Kiosk Center. LitmusCTL create workflow through which user can basically create a Kiosk scenario. You just have to pass the workflow manifest here, and schedule will be created for the users. We have LitmusCTL describe workflow to describe the scenario that have been scheduled. User can also delete the workflow, and if there are multiple workflow runs present inside a workflow, that could be listed as well using LitmusCTL get workflow runs command. So these terminologies have been updated for like from LitmusCTL 0.12. So these commands are basically, let me show you it in LitmusCTL itself. Yep. So here are the commands here. So to create a workflow, here is an example of how user can create a scenario basically from LitmusCTL. So LitmusCTL create scenario, and user need to pass just a workflow YAML, the project ID where user wants to schedule the scenario, and the agent or the chaos delegate where this scenario would be scheduled. So these are the inputs that needs to be provided. So to delete a scenario, okay, so just LitmusCTL delete scenario, and this is the scenario ID that needs to be provided, or the workflow ID, and the project ID where that scenario has been scheduled. To describe the chaos scenarios, LitmusCTL describes chaos scenario, and then the scenario ID and the project ID. This will work. Disconnect is a command to disconnect the chaos delegate, and to get the list of chaos scenarios and chaos scenario runs. These are the two commands that can be used, and project ID can be provided. So these are the additions that we have done in LitmusCTL. So just in case you are inclined towards using the CLI, scenario schedule using LitmusCTL as well, you can find more description on this in the LitmusCTL docs itself. So the link have been provided in the chat, and to create chaos scenario, user can follow this doc. So all the description have been added here in detail. So yeah, is there anything else that anyone wants to know, or like if you have any suggestions on what can be done to improve this or something, we can surely consider that.
Just a quick disclaimer on this. While we have added some of the CRUD operations, as you can see, using LitmusCTL, because there will be users who are more inclined to use CLIs over directly invoking the APIs. This is still in progress. We probably will be solidifying and making these LitmusCTL CRUD operations better over the next couple of releases. So this is basically early changes. If you'd like to test it out and share feedback, you're welcome to do so. Thank you, Sarthak, Amit, for this run through.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, folks. Thanks a lot once again, Vedant, Sarthak, Amit, for that quick run through and all those amazing updates. So we are running short of time, so I'll allow us to move on quickly with the agenda. Perhaps Shubham, you can quickly unmute and just share a quick update on the Cmd Probe.
Sure. Thanks, Prithvi. Hi everyone, I'm Shubham Chaudhary. I will walk through the Cmd Probe source mode enhancements. So I'm sharing my screen. I hope my screen is visible. So, so I believe most of you are already aware about the probes. So for the folks who are joining for the first time and who are the new to the Litmus, I will just briefly explain the probes. So this is the document for the probe. So here you will find all the introduction and everything about the probe. So probe is a way to define the SLOs for while the experiment is running. So we are validating those SLOs, and if and you can specify if you want to terminate the experiment if those conditions are met or not. So you can tune those values as well. So as part of probes, we have 4 types of probes. So first is Cmd probe. So in Cmd probe, we can run the commands and we can check the criteria. So we can run those commands in an inline mode. Inline mode means it will run directly inside the experiment pod. We are not running. We will not launch any external pod to run those commands. And we have a source mode as well. In source mode, we will launch an external pod where if we need any extra binaries which is not a part of our experiment pod, also if there is any permission things which is not there in experiment pod and we want to launch a external pod with those permissions, then we can use the source mode. And the next probe is HTTP probe. In HTTP probe, we are using HTTP GET and POST requests, and we are for those requests we are validating the response code for those requests. And next one is the KTS probe. In KTS probe, we support 4 operations. So first operation is create. So we can create any Kubernetes resource using their GVR values. Then next one is delete. In delete operation, we can you can provide the GVR and the label selector and field selector, and it will delete those resources which will match with these values. The next one is a present. So present will verify whether the GVR values and the label selector and field selector, there should be the resource matching with those values. Next one is the absent. So the absent will verify there should not be any resource with those selectors there. So next one is the Prometheus Probe. In Prometheus Probe, we are providing the Prometheus endpoint, and we are providing the PromeQL command, and we are checking for the whether that matrix is matching our criteria or not. So basically, we are performing some numeric operations, and it should follow those criteria. Otherwise, the probe will fail. So now I will quickly go to our source mode enhancement. So if you want to run the command probe in an inline mode, then you can directly provide that command inside the Cmd process input. You can provide the comparator, and inside the you can provide the source as nil. You do not need to provide anything. So if source will be nil, then it will treat it as a inline mode, and it will run that command probe directly inside the experiment pod. And if you want to run it inside a source mode, and then you need to provide all the tunables. So here the image is a mandatory field here. So you need to provide the image, which using this image, the external pod will be launched, and those commands will be run inside that external pod. And there are some optional field as well. I mean, which is the enhancement. So earlier it was only the image and the host network field. Now we have a couple of new fields here. So I will just go through each and every field. So image is basically the image for the external pod, using which the external pod will be launched. The next one is host network. So if you want to enable the host network for the external pod or not. So by default it will be false. So if you want to enable, you can make it true. The next one is argument. So the external pod will, if you want to override the argument for the external pod, then you can provide those arguments here. And the next one is env. So if you are using your custom image, and to run that image, if you need any env from outside, then you can provide those env inside this env field. Next one is labels. So if you want to label the external pod, and you are using those labels to list those pods, then you can provide the labels. Same for the annotation. If you want to provide any annotation to the probe pod, you can provide the annotations here. Next one is command. So you can also override commands by providing this command field. It will override the commands for the external pod. Next one is the image pull policy. So you can also set the image pull policy for the external pod by this field. Next one is the privilege. So by default, it won't be running in a privilege mode, but if you want to run in a privilege mode, then you can set this value. Next one is the node selector. So if you want to run that probe pod into some specific node, then you can provide the node selector. Next one is the volume. So if you want to mount any volume, then you can provide the details here. Similarly for the volume mount, if you want to provide the volume and volume mount, you can use those values. And if you are using any private image, then you can provide the image pull secrets here. So so we have added support for all these inputs from the 2.12. So I mean, how to set those values? I have a sample engine, so I will show you here. So inside the probe, if you see, I have a probe, and here inside the Cmd probe inputs, I have provided you can provide the command, you can provide the comparator. This one is the source field where we need to provide all the tunables for that external pod. So you can provide image directly, and the host network is a boolean. You can provide true or false. Args is a same. All these fields are like same as how we are using in the Kubernetes thing. The same way you can provide the args here, and env is also the name value, name and value you can provide here. Similarly for the labels and the annotation, both are the map of strings you can provide here. Then command is same. It is a string slice, so we can provide command here. Then image pull policy you can provide directly here, and then privileges boolean value you can provide. Next one is a node selector. You can provide the node selector key value pair if you want to schedule on a node. For image pull secret, you can provide a name of the secret here, and for the volume and volume mount, you can provide their mount path and names, all those details here. So by this way, you can tune all these attributes for the source probe. So I think that's our the new enhancement. So if I am open for the question.
Just to add some context, the reason why we've enhanced the command probe in source mode to be able to take all these different attributes is because sometimes you want to do complex validations, things that might involve scripts that you have to inject at runtime, envs that you might have to inject at runtime. You might want to run the validation from a specific node with a specific network, etc. So this basically enables you to do that. You can make your experiment more effective by adding effective command probes this way. So that's the reason why we've added it. We've had users already trying this out as it was released in 2.12. Some of the users in the community are already using it to perform different kinds of validation on OpenStack and KubeVirt environments. So if you have something that you would like to check as part of the experiment, but something that you would like to automate, but you've not been able to do so till now, you can leverage the new command probe to do that. So you can share feedback on what you think is missing, and we'll be happy to work on adding that into this source mode.
All right, folks, thanks a lot once again, Shubham, for that quick update, and thanks a lot, Karthik, for following up on the same. And with this, I think we are on time, and I'll just open the floor for some questions if we have any for the next 2 to 3 minutes. And we had another agenda item by Udit, but perhaps we'll be covering that in the upcoming sync-up call. So let's just quickly open the floor for any possible questions we have, or anyone would like to add anything else on their experience with Litmus or something that they want to talk about. And then we'll be quickly winding up today's community call. All right, folks, I think there's none. So feel free to ask your questions in the Litmus Chaos Slack channel once again. And thanks a lot for joining in. I'm just sharing the link to the upcoming meetup. Anyone who's available to join in, feel free to join our chaos engineering meetup happening next week. And we'll see you then. Obviously, we'll see you next month once again for the Litmus Chaos Community Sync-up call. Until then, happy chaos engineering, folks. Once again, I just shared the link to the meetup. And thanks a lot once again, everyone, for joining in. Hope you have a great day ahead or a great night ahead. Thanks, everyone. Thank you, folks.
Thank you.